All right, are we live? I think we may be live. Excited to have real estate agents, loan officers on this call. We're talking about how to thrive in this market. Today, I have the pleasure of having Barry Habib on the call. I'll get into his bio, but before I do that, what we're going to be talking about. We're talking about what a recession means for rates in real estate. We're talking about solutions for discouraged buyers. We're talking about what's driving mortgage rates, when will rates decline, understanding the Fed's role, is there a housing crash? And the reason why we're discussing all this, whether you're a real estate agent or a loan officer, is we're positioning ourselves as experts. Now more than ever, when there's uncertainty, our buyers, the consumers out there, and our partners, they want an industry expert to be able to guide them through. And when everything in mainstream media news is pumping fear, uncertainty, and doubt, because that's what gets clicks and views, we need to listen to industry professionals like the esteemed Barry Habib. I'll go through just a few bullet points on his bio. Before I do, as a mortgage loan originator myself, I've been following Barry since 2014. I follow Barry because Barry's walked in our shoes, right? He's originated $2 billion in loans. And for me to get to brand new in 2014 to my first $100 million year last year in 2021, it took adding immense value to the marketplace. The way I feel you're able to do that is by listening to the professionals, listening to the stuff Barry has. I've got my Google Notes up. Over the next 55 minutes as Barry talks, I'm going to be taking notes. Amazon bestseller, Money in the Streets. I got this book, Barry. Certified mortgage advisor. I'm on this team as well. The information that Barry's sharing, he's not guessing, right? 3 times, I think it was 2017, 2019, 2020, Zillow's Crystal Ball Award, right? So he's got numerous awards, 2019 Mortgage Professional of the Year, Ernst & Young Entrepreneur of the Year finalist in 2019. Like, Barry's been around the block. He knows a few things because he's seen a few things. So I'm super, super stoked to hear all these stuff. You're going to blow our minds today, Barry, is your words that you told me. And so let's jump into it, how to thrive in this market. Without further ado, Barry Habib.
Well, Matt, what a pleasure to be with you. And I have such respect for you, and it's amazing to see your level of success and professionalism, but also your commitment and your heart. You just want to do what's great for people, and you want to continue to constantly learn and improve, and that's a great inspiration to all of us. Matt, today there's a lot of concern out there. So if you're a real estate agent, if you're a mortgage professional, there's some headwinds, right? We know that the media is no friend to this. They continue to talk, as they have for the past 10 years, that there's a housing bubble and there's a crash and don't buy and rent. And, they're beating that drum louder than ever right now. People are crawling out from under the woodwork. It's a savagely unhealthy housing market. You hear on one end, you hear, Grant Cardone, you don't buy a home, it's for suckers. And you hear Gary V say, don't buy a home. And, of course, Diana Olick. And we're going to talk about all those things, but it's important for us to be able to, first of all, believe in ourselves, because it's easy to get discouraged. The period of time that we're in now, if you're in the mortgage business, you've seen refinances have slowed significantly, and that the home purchase market has also slowed down, and there's a lot of ways that buyers are maybe being talked out of buying a home because they're hearing all this negativity. So they're not as encouraged or anxious to purchase a home. So you do a lot of work, and if you're in real estate, you're showing people homes, and they get scared because they hear somebody that they think is a resource that scares them out of that purchase. So it could be discouraging for us. Now, if you heard me, over the many years that I've been out there as a professional speaker, or for the last 30 years almost, being able to have audiences where we talk to people and talk about the markets, especially recently, we've had some situations that have come up. COVID is a big one, right? There's a lot of fear that construed. And my talks were always about, we're going through a period of time where it's kind of like a bridge that we have to cross. But once we get over this bridge, there will be a lot of good things that occur. And sure enough, that came to be. Now we're in a little bit of a similar situation. This is a period where we're getting some indigestion here. We're getting some heartburn, but it's a bridge. And I want to show you and explain you and take you down the path of why at the end of this, this will be a very good thing. So spoiler alert, rates are going to come down in a not too distant future. Refinancing will become much more active, and the housing market is not going to crash, and we're going to be in good shape. So let's start with that. But more importantly, now we're going to take you through the path of why. So if you're like me, chances are your email's dinging. Chances are your phone texts are going off or it's ringing. I know we all get that. But I'm going to suggest that you take this time that we're going to spend together and be very focused, because the things that we're going to talk about are going to be very easy for you to understand if you're focused. If you're not focused, if you're a little here or there, it's not going to really sink in, okay? And it's important that it does, because what we're going to be able to do is truly help customers understand the opportunity that's out there and go through all this stuff that they're hearing in the media. So let's get started, and let's give it all our focus and attention, because I promise you it's going to be worth your while. So first of all, let's talk about the real estate market. Is there a housing bubble, and why, and what's creating some of this? Well, just like anything else, real estate values are determined by supply and demand. And the amount of demand that's out there can be influenced by interest rates. The lower the interest rates, the more demand you're going to get. So mortgage rates are an important factor, but it's very misunderstood as far as what drives mortgage rates. Now, a lot of people think, well, maybe it's the Fed that drives mortgage rates. No, that's not the case. Maybe the media or some folks that are less informed might think that. They might think it's Fannie Mae or Freddie Mac or whatever it is. I've heard it all. But the fact of the matter is that what drives mortgage rates is inflation. So we're going to talk about that. So inflation, as you know, things going up in price. Why does inflation drive mortgage rates? So what I'd like you to do is I'd like you to think about this. I'd like you to think about, from your perspective, maybe you're a real estate agent, maybe you're a mortgage professional. I don't want you to think about it as a borrower, realtor, mortgage professional. I want you to think about it as a lender, somebody who's lending money out and doing mortgages. That's what you do. You lend out mortgage money. Now, if it's your own money, if it's a fund that you're managing, whatever, it's your job. So let's say you give me a mortgage, and just to pick some round numbers, a $400,000 mortgage, and that's a fixed rate. So for a long time, I'm going to give you a payment every month of, let's call it $2,000 a month. You get that check for $2,000, and you get a shopping list of goods and services. You get everything on that list for the $2,000. Next month comes around, I give you $2,000, and you get everything on that list. But over time, what you discover is, I can't get everything on that list anymore. I've got to leave some things off. I don't have enough money. The check Barry gives me still says $2,000. It's just not going as far. My buying power is eroding. Why? Because things start costing more. So you got to leave some stuff off the list. That's called inflation. So inflation is making prices go up, and your buying power is being eroded. Now, you're not oblivious to that. You know there's going to be some inflation. But we have been in a period where inflation has been so low, near 1% a year. So it's very little erosion. So you can offer a low rate. But now that inflation's gone from like 1% to, was up to 9.1, now it's 8.3%. So inflation's gone way up. And what you're seeing is a much more rapid rate of erosion of your buying power. So you can't really do anything to the mortgage you gave me because that's closed, that's done, right? But it's your job to continue to lend money out. So what you're thinking about now is you're saying, hey, you know what? My buying power is going to be eroded more rapidly. So therefore, what I need to do is I need to protect myself, and I need to take in more money on my next loan. So the next time I lend somebody like Barry another $400,000, I'm not going to get $2,000 a month. I need $2,400, $2,500, $2,600 a month. And the only way to do that is to charge a higher rate of interest. And that's why when inflation goes up, interest rates have to go up, because then you get a higher return, you get a higher payment every month, which offsets the more rapid rate of erosion. I hope that makes sense. It's a very important point. So I'm going to share my screen here, and we're going to go through some slides together. And as we do, we are going to talk about all things real estate and interest rates and what drives them, but also we're going to talk about recession. So we just mentioned inflation. So, okay, so let's be clear. What is inflation? Inflation is just simply too many dollars chasing too few goods. And you kind of saw that in the real estate market, right? When there were too many buyers, that's too many dollars chasing too little inventory or houses, and prices were going up. It's the same thing with anything. If you have too many buyers or too much money, too many dollars bidding prices up because there's not enough of it, you see prices go higher. So in comes the Fed, and the Fed says, hey, it's our job to fight inflation. Well, they hadn't done a very good job of it. You know, that you could say it's kind of like, that's like an arsonist becoming a firefighter now, right? But now the Fed says we're going to get serious and we're going to fight inflation. Okay, well, how do they do that? They start hiking rates. Now, what do they hike rates on? They hike rates on something called the Fed funds rate. Now that affects not mortgages, but it affects things like personal loans, credit cards, car loans, home equity loans. It affects business loans, commercial and industrial loans. That's the big money. And it makes that cost more, makes it more expensive. So you see, when you take out credit, you kind of create money out of thin air, right? If you were only limited to purchasing things that you had actual cash to purchase, you wouldn't be able to purchase as much than if you were able to borrow money to make those purchases. That means when you borrow it, you're really literally creating money out of thin air, which is more dollars. So the Fed says, hey, we want to limit that creating money out of thin air. So we want to make borrowing less. So we make it more expensive to do so. And while it's more expensive to buy cars and take out money on your credit card and things like that, the real big money comes with those commercial and industrial loans. That's, I'm going to go and acquire a company and I need $400 million. I'm going to build a factory for $500 million somewhere. These are the types of things that cost big money and you borrow that money. Now, when the Fed funds rate 6 months ago was roughly zero, maybe you were paying 2% above that. Well, borrowing money at 2%, I mean, that's okay. Now remember, all these loans are variable. As the Fed moves, these rates move. So they're not locked in or fixed at any time. But now the Fed's taking the Fed funds rate right now to, let's say, 2.5. And we know that a week from today, they're going to move it up to 3.25. And then again on November 2nd, they're going to probably take it up above 4%. Maybe they bring it up to 5%. Now, if I'm paying 2% above the Fed funds rate, now it's going to cost me 7%. And boy, believe me, on $300 or $400 or $500 million, there's a very big difference between paying 2% and 7%. So the economics might not make sense. So what do? Well, I'm not going to do it. I'm not going to build that factory. I'm not going to buy that company. I'm not going to do these things because the economics don't make sense anymore. And that's when the Fed's successful by hiking rates. They eliminate money. They also eliminate money by people now, instead of spending it, saving it. Remember a few months back, you'd go to the bank and what's your rate of interest that you can get on a savings account? 0.0, virtually nothing. So people said, hey man, I'd rather spend it if I'm not going to get a rate of return, or maybe be more speculative. But today you can get a little bit of a rate of return and that's going to go up, up, up. Now people could start getting 4 or 5% in the bank. They'll save that money. So that's what the Fed wants to do. They say, hey, Fed hikes means more bank deposits. So that takes money out of the situation. Now, we've also got more goods coming our way. All these lockdowns that we've seen from COVID in China, where a lot of goods get exported from, are starting to unwind. We're starting to see these come out. So we should get more goods. Now, one caveat on this is, let's pray that tomorrow at midnight, there isn't this big railway workers strike. Man, that's bad, because that would shut down like 30% of the goods that are transported. That could cause a lot of heartburn and hardship. I think it's so cruel to go on strike at a time like this. But let's hope they get this worked out, because that could throw a wrench in things. But let's assume that they do. We should see inflation come down. And remember, why is that so important? Because inflation drives mortgage rates. So inflation should start coming down, which means mortgage rates should start coming down. And here's a chart to show you. The bottom line's inflation, the top line are mortgage rates. So inflation goes up, mortgage rates go up. Inflation comes down, mortgage rates go down, and so forth, until you got into a situation where we had COVID, and then the Fed came in with quantitative easing. And during the quantitative easing period, the Fed, what does that mean? They were buying things like treasuries and mortgage bonds, and noticed that they kept mortgage rates right around 3% by buying so much of them that they kept rates right in this period of time here. But inflation, meanwhile, was starting to move higher. And as it moved up, 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 and up, the Fed said, it's transitory. We don't have to worry about it. But sure enough, inflation was not transitory. And it was something that we have to worry about. And we're all feeling the pinch from the Fed's mistakes right now. And as soon as the Fed stopped their QE, well, look at what mortgage rates did. They did what they've always done. They move in conjunction with inflation. Inflation goes up, mortgage rates go up. Inflation dips, mortgage rates dips. Inflation goes up, mortgage rates go up. Inflation dips, mortgage rate, and so on. Now, it's very important for us to understand this because if we take a look at inflation in its current state, the Fed doesn't really understand it, and they admit that they don't understand it. That's kind of scary. Let's hope that they do a better job. Now, let's understand what the Fed doesn't right now, and I'm going to explain this to you. So this chart, we're going to take it slow, but you will fully understand this chart in a minute. What this measures is the rate of inflation. And what I'm looking at here is the consumer price index, but I'm looking at the core rate. What does the core rate mean? This takes away things like energy prices and food prices. Now, we all know we need energy. We all know we need food. So why are we taking out of the core rate? Because the Fed knows that it does not influence those prices. So if there's a drought and crop prices go up, or similar situations like in Ukraine, heaven forbid, things that might affect oil exports with Russia, these changes are not being able to be influenced by the Fed. So they just look at things that they might have influence over, and that's the core rate of inflation. This is what the Fed tells us they want their target to be 2%. That's way too high right now. It's 6.3% on a year-over-year basis. So how do we get that 6.3% year over year? Well, as it turns out, it's made up of each individual month's inflation. So here, we just got yesterday the inflation reading for August of 2022. So if you took each individual month here and you added this all together for the last 12 months, that brings you to 6.3%. Now, yesterday was a tough day for mortgage rates because inflation went up, and mortgage rates hate when inflation goes up. So why did inflation go up? The rate that we received for August was 0.6% for the month of August. We got this yesterday. And this replaced August of 2021, which, as you could see, was a very low reading. It was just 0.2%. So 0.6% is 0.4 higher than 0.2%. And that's why the year-over-year reading went up from 5.9. It went up 0.4 to 6.3. And the market sure hated that. Now, anybody who's been following me knows that we told you this was coming. We told you that we said it in the beginning of the year. We said the summer is going to be a cruel summer because we saw these low readings from 2021. And we said in 2022, it's going to be hard to see inflation come down because these are already so low. So it's not that easy to come in with lower readings than these. But we did say that starting October, the readings for 2021 and in 2022 were much higher. So therefore, we felt that you're going to start to see inflation come down in the fourth quarter and first quarter of next year, which will translate to mortgage rates coming down. Now, before we get there, though, we got this one. It says 0.3, but as you can see, it's a little bit under 0.3%, maybe 0.27 or something like that. Now, if we get a reading that's a little higher than that, well, then inflation is going to go up and the bond market's not going to like it. Now, it is possible because we don't know what the inflation number is going to come out for September. We're going to get that in a month. It could come in lower than this, and that could be good news. But what we're telling you is be on guard because it's a very low bar here, and there's a chance that you could see inflation go up and the market not like it too much. But come October, when we get that reading, and November and December and January, these are all high readings. So we should see inflation come down, 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 down. And that should help mortgage rates come down, down, down. In fact, I think mortgage rates will be below 5% sometime between the fourth quarter and first quarter. And look, if you got a mortgage rate that starts with a 4, people will be happy with that with buying a home, so activity will jump up. But also, did you know that 50% of the mortgages that are out there are above 4% right now? In fact, every loan you're doing today is going to be refinanced in the next 9 months. So there's a lot of good that's happening and a lot of good that will occur. And when the Fed hikes rates next week and then again November 2nd, that's going to start to take a bite and slow things down. The thing of it is that the Fed is going to hike us into another recession. Now, we'll examine this and why. Well, the Fed goes too far. The Fed just doesn't know how to stop. It's kind of analogous to, well, first of all, let me explain this. When the Fed hikes rates or cuts rates, it takes time to filter through the system, because think about it. Let's say the Fed hiked rates. Does anything really happen the day that they hike rates? Well, no. A month later, when you get your statement, your payment has gone up. But by the time you make it, 2 months have passed. And if you were in the middle of something, you're probably not going to change course in the middle of it because the Fed hiked rates. It's those future decisions. So that's why they say it takes 3 to 6 months for the Fed hikes to really take hold. So that means one of the aspects of this is you got to see into the future a little bit. You got to be patient. But the Fed's not. They just hike, and then they go too far and we get a recession, as you can see here, the darker areas. And this is the last 70 years. Every time, hike us into a recession over and over and over again. Goodness gracious. And here's where we are now. Next week, it'll be up in here. On November 2nd, it'll be here. And if we're not already in a recession, which we may be, we surely are headed for one if we're not there already. It's kind of analogous. And Alan Greenspan, our former Fed chair for 18 and a half years, he said that we have to be patient. Otherwise, it's like when you take your morning shower, you turn on the water and maybe it's cold. If you put it to the extreme hot setting, sure, it'll warm up for a little bit, but then it'll get too hot. If you put it extreme cold, it'll get too cold and you'll be going back and forth. And that's what the Fed does. That's why we have these boom cycles followed by a bust cycle, because the Fed goes too far in hiking and too far in cutting because they can't see past their own hand. And that's dangerous for us. So we know that it's important for us to be able to see what the Fed doesn't see. And part of this is the yield curve. And our yield curve right now is inverted. So let me explain to you what a normal yield curve looks like. A normal yield curve says that if you want me to make an investment and tie my money up for a short period of time, well, that's less risk. If it's a longer period of time, other things can happen. I can miss opportunities, bad things can occur. So if I'm going to tie my money up for a longer period of time, I want a greater rate of return. That's only normal. And that's what a normal yield curve looks like. Shorter term, less interest. Longer term, more interest. Well, today, shorter term is yielding more than longer term. Now that's abnormal. It tells you that the market is sick. The economy is sick. Why? Because longer term, as I've explained, what they care about is inflation. And if the economy is starting to show signs of weakness, then inflation will start coming down. Shorter term is going to be very attached to the Fed. So when the Fed inverts the yield curve, it means they push short-term rates up way too high, and long-term rates are already saying the economy is going to slow down and inflation is going to come down. So if you take, let's say, the 10-year Treasury, it should be higher than the 2-year Treasury. So if you take the 10-year and subtract the 2-year Treasury yield, it should be a positive number because the 10-year is usually a bigger number. And that's when you see green here, the 10-year minus the 2-year. But sometimes the 2-year, like it is right now, is higher than the 10-year. And as you could look through history, back in the 70s and 80s, every time that happens, it's followed by a recessionary period. That's the highlighted periods. Inversion, recession, inversion, recession, inversion, recession, inversion, recession, again, and here's where we are now. So we know we're going to have a recession if we're not there already. So, okay, what about the fact that the unemployment rate's low? Now, this guy, if you don't know who it is, that's Chris Waller. He is a Fed governor. Now, there's 12 people of the 19 Fed members that vote every year and decide, do we hike rates, do we cut rates, what do we do for monetary policy? The governors vote every year. The Fed presidents rotate, but this guy votes every year, so he's important. And he says, I can't see a recession with a 3.7% unemployment rate. And a lot of people in the media say, how can we have a recession? Unemployment rate's low. Well, maybe it's a surprise, but that's exactly when recessions begin, is when the unemployment rate's at its lowest level and starts to tick higher. Now remember, the low was 3.5, and then last reading it went from 3.5 to 3.7. So it's starting to tick higher. And you can see that's happened for the last 100 years, over and over again. The unemployment rate comes down, but then it hits its lowest level and starts to tick up. Recession, again, over and over and over. And here's where we are here. It doesn't take a technician to see that we're probably near the low cycle here, right? So we have to watch for that turning point here. So why does this happen anyway? Well, look, if times are good, you're going to be hiring people. So what happens to this line? The unemployment rate comes down because you keep hiring people. Now, when things eventually slow down, you stop hiring, and then eventually, if they slow down enough, you start letting people go. So the unemployment rate starts ticking higher, okay, in all these cases. Well, then what happens? Those newly unemployed people, they change their spending habits. Less going out to dinner, less clothes shopping, less vacations, less buying appliances, luxury items, and all those businesses that used to get business from them, they feel the pinch, and now they start letting people go. And then the cycle perpetuates itself, and you get recession-like conditions, and you see the unemployment rate shoot up from there. That's what we see. But according to the Fed, we don't see a recession. It looks like what they call a soft landing. Well, the water might seem tranquil, but you have to be able to look further than your hand, because what's ahead may not be so tranquil, okay? We can't make that mistake, folks. All right, so let's just say you feel that there will be a recession either now or up ahead. How does that affect mortgage rates in real estate? Well, let's take mortgage rates first. Every time we have a recession, mortgage rates drop. And the last one, they dropped by 1% and then went down further. Here, they dropped by more than 1% and went down further. Here, they dropped near 1% and went down more. Here, as you can see, 2% and much more, 5%, 4%. Mortgage rates decline during recessions. So if we're about to or in or going to see a recession soon, recession slows things down, which slows down spending, slows down money in the system, and slows down inflation, which lowers interest rates. But how about housing? Because the media is already going to say, hey, the housing market, they're killing the housing market every chance they get right now. They start to hear recession, and they're going to say, don't buy a home, recession's going to kill the housing market, it's going to crash. Well, let's look at history. The last 9 recessions over the past 60 years, in 8 of them, home prices did well and went up afterwards, did well, went up, did well, went up again, and here as well, because rates come down. So why didn't it work out here? It didn't work out here because it wasn't the recession that caused the housing bubble. It was actually the housing bubble that caused the recession. And when you take a look at what caused the housing bubble, it's a couple of things. But the big one was demographics. Look, like anything else, price is determined by supply and demand. Too much supply, not enough demand, prices come down. Too much demand, not enough supply, prices go up. Well, in this case, it was way too much supply. Builders built more homes than we have ever built in the history, even to this day, in 2006. And you can see that here in 2006, the gold line is builders building more homes than ever, but household formations in blue dropped tremendously and suddenly and stayed low for a period of time before recovering. Why? Why did we see this big drop in birth rates? What caused it? I'm sorry, in household formations. What caused it? It was a drop from 33 years before that in birth rates. Now, by the way, just so you know, a household formation, let's just say you have a family and they live in a home, and then somebody comes of age, and the median age of the first-time home buyer is 33 years old. So now that 33-year-old leaves and goes and buys their own place. They formed their own household. So that whole family, instead of living in one place, now they have same family, but they're occupying 2 residences. Now, 2006 is when it started. So when were these household formers born? Household formations, these people were born 33 years earlier, or in 1973. In 1973, abortions were legalized and birth rates dropped. Now listen, I'm not advocating for or against, I'm not, nothing political here. I'm just saying, factually speaking, once abortions were legalized, birth rates factually declined. And that means 33 years later, there were less 33-year-olds to form households. At the same time, builders were building them more than ever before, and that's why you had this imbalance. And here's the thing, is that this imbalance here was exacerbated by no income, no asset, no job, 580 FICO, investor property, 0 down. Clearly, that's what caused the housing bubble. So people come out now and they try and take advantage of all this stuff. And somebody like Grant Cardone, who's a brilliant marketer, comes out, and what does he say? He says, don't buy a home, unless you can afford to waste money. You could see his article, and then he gives some crazy stuff. And a lot of people listen to guys like Grant Cardone. He's a very effective marketer. He says, if you purchase a $100,000 home with $5,000 down, 10 years later, the home sells for $200,000. Seems like a big profit because you turned 5,000 into 100. Consider the costs: 10 years of interest, 10 years of property taxes, real estate fees. So your total cost is $86,000. That's only a $14,000 profit. And then he says that's 1.4% a year. Now his math is not correct, but let's just go by what he says here because he's forgetting a big point. The big point here is, Grant, where are you going to live? You're going to have a cost for that. I mean, unless he thinks you're going to sleep on a park bench somewhere. So let's just be gentle and say it's only $1,500 a month for rent, but it's got a 6% increase per year. That's $237,000. When you add that to the $14,000, you made a 5,000% rate of return, or 500% a year, using his messed up math. So this is what happens. People try and gain advantage by painting a picture that looks like you should be fearful because that's what gets eyeballs. And this is not his first time. Back in 2016, he says buying a home's for suckers. Should you own a home? Unless you have 20 million bucks in the bank in cash, you have no business buying a house. So how did you do if you listened to Grant Cardone in 2016? Well, in 2016, if you were thinking about buying a $300,000 home, but you said, hey man, Grant Cardone said, don't buy it. I'm not a sucker and I don't have $20 million. You missed out on putting 10% down or $30,000 on this home. But according to the best way to gauge this, the Case-Shiller Home Price Index, homes are up 72% since 2016. So that home today is valued at $516,000. So you missed a $216,000 profit. That's real money. It's a 720% return. Folks, this is important stuff. This is absolutely, a lot of wealth that was lost. And then there's people that love Gary V. And, listen, Gary V is very well known, and he's done some wonderful marketing things as well. I mean, it hasn't done well with all his NFT stuff, but he hates housing. And you don't have to take it from me. You can clearly pull up his interview from 2019 where he said a lot of curses, but the important points is he doesn't think that the American dream should be buying a home. He thinks it's full of shit. He thinks it's a bad use of upfront capital. It ties you up. It's not smart. He's pissed he owns a home. That's the one I don't understand. Nobody's holding a gun to your head to own a home. Don't be pissed you own a home. Why do you own a home? So he says you'd rent in perpetuity now, and he will. He'll never buy a new home. You shouldn't buy a home. Buy a Lambo instead of a home because you'd show it off. It's crazy stuff. So how did Gary V's advice do? Well, since 2019, if you would have purchased a $400,000 home but say, no, I trust Gary V, I didn't put 10% down or $40,000, you missed out on 48% appreciation since then. So your home would be worth $592,000. So you missed $192,000 profit, or a 480% return. Again, this is real money. This is real wealth. And of course, the queen of this is Diana Olick, who has put out literally hundreds and hundreds and hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of negative stories about housing for the past 10 years. And she has hurt so many people. Now, when she does this, I will show you, of the hundreds and hundreds and hundreds, and she does like 3 a day now. I will show you just a few over the years of the things that she said. So for example, in 2015, she says, we're going to have a bubble larger than 2006. She said that 7 years ago. So if you missed out on buying a $300,000 home, you missed out on that year's appreciation of 5.1% or $15,000. Now the next year, did she say, I'm sorry I cost you $15,000? No, she just said, we're in a new housing bubble. Okay, well, if you listen to her that year, you missed out another $17,000 because prices went up 5.4%. So in 2017, does she say, sorry, I'm wrong? She said, no, home ownership doesn't build wealth. Well, please just point to me the one person who didn't see home prices appreciate since 2017. Just show me the one. And people missed out in that year another $20,000. So in 2018, she says, listen, don't buy a home. It's better to rent than to buy in today's housing market. Well, in 2018, that year, prices went up another $14,000. By the way, I don't think anybody's been better off since 2018 renting than buying a home. And then in the middle of 2019, she comes out with this big story. Hold on, stop in your tracks. The housing market's about to shift in a bad way. Do not buy a home. But in the second half of that year, values went up another 15,000 or 4%. So at the end of 2019, she says, do not buy a home, whatever you do. Next year is going to be really hard on the housing market. Rent, sell your home. She tells you to sell your home. And if you did, you missed out on another $61,000 in appreciation during 2020. So last year, she says, the housing boom, it's over a year ago. Well, if you listen to her, you missed out on another 80,000. By the way, folks, I just look up and guess who's on TV right now? Oh my gosh, she's out there doing it again. You can count on her to do this. I swear to you, I just looked up at my TV. She's on TV right now, spewing the poison. So why do they do that? Because fear sells. You know, sex sells, fear sells. This is nothing more than fear porn. So let's understand why this is so important. Because it affects net worth. You see, if you want to be in the top 1%, rarefied air here, of wealthiest Americans, you need a net worth of $10.8 million. So net worth is all your assets minus all your liabilities and what money you owe. So $10.8 million is what you need to be in the top 1%. Okay, so how about the top 2%? $2.5 million. How about the top 5%? $1 million. This is all according to Kiplinger's. The top 10%? $800,000. The top 50%. So you want to be in the top half or the bottom half? The dividing line is $500,000 in net worth. Now, here's the thing, is that according to Kiplinger's study, 2/3 of net worth, 2/3 of net worth comes from home equity. Wow. So you got to be in the game. So the savagely unhealthy housing market, all these publications, the Diana Oliks, the Gary V's, the Grant Cardone, maybe they want to hold you down. But it's up to you as an advisor to help people see that this is how you create wealth. You want to be in the bottom half? Don't own real estate. So, okay, what's the real story? How about household formations? So household formations is something that I believe we just spoke about. So therefore, what we want to make sure we do is we want to make sure we take a look at the demand equation. So how many households are being formed in the United States? So right now it's about 1.7 million, but we've been near this number for a while now. Now this is your COVID distortions, but as you can see, it averages out to this number, for the past couple of years. And even before that, it was averaging out to be this. Now it dropped a little bit here, but it was above it a little bit. But since about 2015 or so, it's been near this number. Now population is growing as well. So we do need about 1.7 million households. Okay, so that's how many are being formed. So that's what we need in houses to be supplied. But how many are being supplied? Well, if you go by completions, not just a hole in the ground that a builder started a home, in the United States, we're building about 1.4 million homes. And of that, about 100,000 of them are being either renovated or rebuilt or destroyed from aging. So net, we're gaining about 1.3 million new residences a year. This counts multifamily and stuff like that. So new dwellings, 1.3 million, but we need 1.7 million. We're short 400,000 dwellings. That's why inventory is so tight. And when we look at inventory, people want to compare it to a housing bubble. Well, the housing bubble, there was 3.8 million units for sale. Today is 1.3 million, a third of them, the second lowest in history. So there's not that much on the market right now. And don't forget, our population since here has grown by 14 million households. That's not people, that's households. It's, there's 2 or 3 people in each household on average. So, 14 million more households fighting for 2.5 million less units. That's why you're seeing inventory so tight. But 1.3 million, huh? That's gone up a lot. And this looks troubling because when you take a look, starting April, inventory went up. It went up in May. It went up in June and July. Even in August, it went up. Oh boy. This looks like it's bad news to see inventory go up. And I've seen many people use this exact picture you're looking at here. A friend of mine, Patrick Bet-David, in his seminar, he used this exact picture here. And it does look troubling when you see the growth in inventory. But if we gain some perspective, why don't we look at this not just 1 year? Let's look at, does this happen in the past? As it turns out, it happens every year, over and over and over and over and over and over again. When you look at it like this, it doesn't look so troubling, does it? So why does this happen? Why do we see inventories build at the beginning of the year or at the spring of each year between April and August? Why? It's the spring home buying season. Why is it the spring home buying season? Well, think about it. Remember when you were a kid and a new kid would come into class in the middle of the school year? Well, the friendships were formed. Kids are cliquey. Kids can be cruel. So it was hard on that child coming in. And parents know this. So they say, look, I'm going to move, but I want my kid to start at the beginning of the school year, which means I have to be moved into my new home in the months of June, July, or August, which means I have to sell my old home when? April, I'll put it on the market. May, June, July, August. That's why this happens every single year. It's the spring home buying season, not because of flowers in bloom. It's the spring home buying season because I need to get my kid into school at the end of August or the beginning of September. So we just said there's 1.3 million units in inventory. And Diana will look for somebody to get on and say, well, that's like a 3-month supply and that's growing and it's still tight, but it doesn't tell you the whole story. You always have to be smarter and dig deeper. Did you know what's included in here? Those under contract. That's off the market. If somebody's closing next week, but they haven't closed yet, it's counted in here. A realtor's not going to take somebody and say, oh, let's look at a home for shits and giggles because they're closing next week. I want you to see it. Let's knock on the door. Are you kidding me? That's not going to happen. So when you take those that are under contract out of it, we only have 747,000 homes in active listings. This is a country with 340 million people. Inventory's tight, folks. Can't have a bubble with such little inventory. And this gives you perspective. You can see this is active listings. Little COVID distortion here, but the same thing happens. Now, we just came off this year. When you saw that go up, that was from the lowest levels in history. Yes, it's going up a little bit higher now. Okay, prices are up. Rates are up at 6%. No wonder why prices, why this is going up a little bit. It's natural, but it's still a lot less than 2020, 2019, 2018, all these years. And today, 43% of these are under contract. It's usually typically 25%. So the market is still seeing a lot of strength if the home's priced right. Uh-oh, but there's this problem. Dramatic increase in foreclosures, according to CBS Market Watch. Filings are up, oh God, more than 150%. Yikes. So let's take a look. Are they up more than 150%? Yeah, they are. From 2021, they're up 150%. But wait a second. You couldn't do foreclosures, a lot of them in 2021, right? You had moratoriums. You had some forbearance. Oops, we forgot to mention that. So let's go to a year that was more normal. Does the media say, hey, we're down 40% from then? No. Does the media say from the last time the housing market was in trouble, we're down 90% from then? No, because that doesn't sell. That doesn't get eyeballs. Good news doesn't sell. Here's a more fear porn. And this is one you see every single day. It's not affordable. And first of all, let me just say, I agree that's less affordable, okay? But I'd like to at least tell you the whole story. So last year, if you were going to buy a home and you needed a $400,000 mortgage, and let's pick a rate of 3.5% or so, and the payment's like $1,800, okay? Now, according to the statistics from Fannie or Freddie, to the average person taking out a mortgage of this was making a household income of $9,000. Now, this year, a little different. Values went up, rates went up. So because values went up and rates went up, well, you got to borrow more money. If prices went up 18% to buy a similar home, I got to borrow $472. That's going to cost me more, and the rate's higher. So let's call it $1,000 a month more. Man, that's a lot more money. But that's where the media stops. Here's what they don't tell you. What they don't tell you is the income changed too. Now, ADP, they've measured 25 million records. And what they say is that if you stayed on your job, on average, you made 7.6% more. If you switched jobs, you made 16% more. But there's more people that stayed than switched, so the blended increase is 9%, which means you make $800 a month more. Now, it's still more expensive. And wait a minute, there's more because I want to be 100% fair. Gases cost more. Foods cost more. Services cost more. So listen, there's no doubt it's more painful. Yes, clearly, it's costing you net after your increase, $400, $500 a month more. That's meaningful for sure. But Let's not be like, remember the picture I showed you of Jerome Powell in the boat where he couldn't see past his hand? What happens next year? Well, this is a fixed payment, folks. So your payment's locked. Maybe you could even refinance it to a lower rate. Maybe, but assuming you don't, your income. What happens to your income? That goes up. And now that your income goes up, you've completely negated all of the additional expense in just a year from now. So smart people look at this and say, that's an opportunity. That means today I could buy a home and maybe even get a little better price. Heck, I could do a home inspection now. I could do an appraisal. I don't have to give up terms. Yes, maybe I'm paying a higher rate, but this could be my forever home. It doesn't have to be my forever loan. I could certainly refinance it, but the payment's going to feel a lot better in 2023 as my income goes up. And that's, as an advisor, what you need to do. Now, I'm just going to give you some marketing ideas from here and there from time to time during this talk. And one marketing idea I'd like to give you is something. So there's a show called Financing the American Dream, and you may have seen me on it. It's on CNBC. It's an Emmy Award winning show, and it's on Bloomberg and many different networks that it's carried across. So I open the show and I talk about 6 minutes or so of different trends, but then for the rest of the show, it goes to different local markets. And people purchase that territory. People like you can have that and have a portion of the show that you do. So I'm watching people that do it because I'm involved. Now, I have no affiliation with them. I just do the show, right? So when they do it, they're getting lots of exposure, lots of new leads, lots of business. But boy, I'll tell you what, think about it from a realtor perspective or a mortgage person's perspective about featuring a listing on the show. Man, that's a nice, easy way to get a listing or to build a relationship, and people are crushing it. Now, if you're interested in this, so first of all, it's not inexpensive. It's like $1,000 or $2,000 a month. I don't know exactly. Depends on where the market you are. And a lot of markets are occupied, so you'd have to apply to see if you can get a territory. But if you're serious about it and you want to do it, then use your phone now and just get the QR code so you can tap it and get to the website, and you could apply to see if this would be something you'd be able to acquire. Just an idea. And the reason I'm sharing it with you is because I'm watching the people that are doing this wind up doing a lot of business from it. Housing forecast for you. Rents are going to continue to rise 12 to 14%, on renewals about 8%, and purchases and real estate, I see mid-single digit appreciation on average, 4 to 5%. So is that a bad thing? Yeah, it's not 18%, but is it bad? Let's go to school on this, okay? I want you to teach this to your customers and realtors. So a $400,000 purchase price, 10% down means your investment is $40,000. That's your cash investment. Now, you're going to make a payment on the rest, but that payment would be kind of close to what it would be renting or paying. That's the cost of something to where you're going to sleep at night. Now, if this property appreciated just 4%, that's $16,000. So that's your profit. So $40,000 investment, $16,000 profit. Well, $16,000 profit on a $40,000 investment, that's a 40% return on your money. And folks, that's why so many people create wealth in real estate and why you need to be in this game. But some people don't qualify. You've got to take out a non-QM loan. Sometimes people are in a position where they're saying, hey, you know what? Rates are up, so maybe I'll rent. So is it better to rent? Let me give you an example. Purchase price of $400,000, loan amount 10% down is $360. 30-year fixed rate loan, let's pick 7.5%. I know the rates are much cheaper than that, but let's say it's a non-QM loan. So 7.5% rate, and they think they're going to be at home for 9 years. Well, let's also consider the fact that if you buy a home, you've got some other negatives. Your property taxes go up. You got to worry about repair costs, which you're renting, you don't have to worry about, right? So you have to budget this for repairs, and the cost to sell in the future on the appreciated value, let's take 6%. Now the home's going to go up in value, so the average historical rate of appreciation is about 4.5%. But what about rent? If I rented now, a $400,000 home is going to be well above $3,000 a month. But let's just say you're getting the steal of a century, and you're able to rent it for $27.50 a month. And year-over-year rental increase, while the rest of the market's going up at 8%, you figured out a way to negotiate a 6% rental increase. Pretty good. So should you buy or should you rent? It's a sweet deal renting. Maybe you should do it. Look, if you buy the home, your payment's $3,500. If you rent, it's $2,700 a month. So man, a lot cheaper to rent. Is it better? But that rent goes up. And over the 9 years, it's kind of a break even. Or is it? Let me think about something. Your monthly principal and interest payment It's made up of principal and interest. So I think you all know who gets the interest, right? The lender gets the interest. Who gets the principal though? Whose money is that? The principal is the homeowner's money. It's the borrower's money. It's your own money. Look, let me use this example with you, and maybe you could share it with your clients. If I had cash sitting in my left-hand pocket, I took it out, I took it in my right hand, and I put it in my right-hand pocket, is it still my money? Oh, of course it is, but it's in a different location. When you make your mortgage payment out, it's sitting in your checking account. It's your money. Now the lender cashes it, and now it's an equity in your home because it's less that you owe against it. It's still your money. It's just in a different location. And it's important to discuss this because it's a big number. In this case, it's 41,000. So it's not a break even because part of the cash flow is you giving yourself money in a different location. You're actually $41,000 cheaper than renting. And then what about appreciation? What about that 4.49%? It's hard for people to figure 4.49% compounded over 9 years, how much that is. So let me do it for you. It's $193,000, $194,000 basically. It's a lot of money. And that's why Albert Einstein called compound interest the eighth wonder of the world. You should explain this to your customers because they won't be able to do it on their own. And then you get a tax benefit. And then let's figure out that we have to sell the home. So 6% on the appreciated value. Let's take that into account. So is it better to buy or is it better to rent? Well, you tell me. Looks like it's $205,000 better to buy than rent over the 9 years you were going to be there. If you're there longer, it's even better. But even if you're there shorter, in 5 years, heck, why would you waste $64,000? If you're there 4 years, 3 years, it's still better. Now look, in this crazy example with a 7.5% rate and a below market rent, for the first 2 years, it looks cheaper renting. So I'd say this to the customer, look, if you're going to move within 2 years, rent. But if you're going to be there longer than 2 years, and this doesn't even count if you were to refinance that 7.5% rate to a lower rate, which you probably will have many opportunities to do. Co-brand this with your realtor because this is a home run, folks. This is what people need to see. Now, another area that people are underestimating is the investment property area. You remember, to create wealth, you need real estate, 2/3 of all net worth. So smart people are looking at investment properties because you can get a very big return. In fact, did you know that 1 out of every 6 or 7 transactions is an investment property? So if you're not paying attention to this, you're missing out on 1 out of every 6 or 7. And because there's less competition, there's a great opportunity for you and your realtor to do a lot more business. Here's an example. Purchase price of $500,000, 20% down, is a $400,000 loan, 30-year fixed rate at 6%. They're going to own it for 9 years. The cost to buy, your closing cost to buy, the repair costs on average that you want to budget, your taxes are going to go up, your selling cost of 6% of the appreciated value, and the forecast for the next 9 years that values are going to go up another 5% or so per year on average. You'll get $3,400 income in rent. It's going to go up 6% a year conservatively because the market's at 8%. And let's figure a vacancy rate too. So put that all together. Let's analyze this. And we're going to use a tool that you have your access to in MBS Highway. You already have this, so use it. All this stuff you have access to. Year 1, your cash flow is negative, $351 a month, but it gets better. In fact, over the 9 years, you make $51,000 cash on cash from cash flow. That's a 45% return. But the real big money starts with appreciation and then amortization, which tells you that on rental income that you'll receive over the 9 years, this is including vacancy, appreciation, you're going to get $730,000. Your expenses for interest, property taxes, insurance, repairs, closing cost to buy and sell, well, that's $400,000. This investment will win and get you $329,000. Considering it was a $100,000 investment, that's a 329% return. Now, what is that average annual compounded return? 17.6%. Did you know the best money managers ever in history are gauged by can they get better than 15%? No wonder why people make wealth with real estate. Now, here's another idea. Before a real estate agent goes to a listing appointment, why don't you help them? Why don't you give them, you have access to it, our MB estimate. Don't go to Zillow for the Zestimate because they're going to be bombarded with their realtors and their mortgage professionals. You want the MB estimate, which you already have access to. So how long does it take for you to pull up one of these? Well, it takes me like 6 seconds, and I am not a great typist. probably take you less. So this is a great report. Tells you the value, the range, all the neighborhoods. Tells you where all the comps are, so the real estate agent doesn't have to spend time pulling comps. It looks professional. They see the trends in the marketplace, the sales price changes, the price per square foot that they can expect, what the amount of sales that's occurring are. It's great. And then I don't think you should talk to anyone without looking at a real estate report card. How long does it take you to pull this up? Well, about 3 seconds. You could do it on your phone too. Why would you just talk to your customer about rate and qualifying? Heck, your phone can do that. And you know what? It could do it faster than we can, more accurately than we can, and cheaper than we can. So why do we want to play in that space? Why don't we give the customer what they want? How does my market that I'm looking to purchase and make the largest investment in my life stack up to other areas around the country? What's the price per square foot on average here? How historically has this appreciated? What's the forecast? How much does that mean to me that I'll make over the next 5 years? What's the demographics and age groups of my neighborhood? What's inventory look like? Hey, what is the renter situation here? And then household formations versus homes being built, supply and demand. How does that look? Well, it looks pretty supportive. What does affordability look like in this market? What's the income levels? What's unemployment? How's job creations here? Everything that they want to know, you have at your fingertips and co-brand it with your realtor. It makes for a very different conversation with your customer. Do you want to be an advisor or a salesperson? Look, you want to grow exponentially. How do you grow exponentially, folks? By doing these things and doing them right away. If there's an idea that you see or you like, take action. Look, here's an example. If you started saving a penny a day and doubling it after 1 week, if you invested it and it doubled every day, after a week, you'd have 64 cents. But if you started a week earlier, you'd have $81. 2 weeks earlier, $10,000. A week earlier than that, 1.3 million. 2 days before that, 5.3 million. A day before that, 10.7 million. Folks, exponential growth is what's important. The lesson here is that the way to get more exponential growth is to not procrastinate, to start sooner. Procrastination is a thief that will steal from you, from your success, from your family. If you have an idea that you like, do it now, folks. One thing that you should consider is, first of all, utilize MBS Highway. Make sure you watch the updates every morning religiously so you're scripted, so you sound better than your competitors. Use the tools, familiarize yourself, but also expand your knowledge. You should be a certified mortgage advisor, whether you're a realtor, whether you're a mortgage professional. You should get this because there's no substitute for wisdom. Look, you know the Fed screws things up, right? I don't have to tell you. You know the Fed employs 400 PhDs. They've got 18,000 employees, and yet they screw it up because there's a big difference between knowledge and wisdom. Do this to gain wisdom. You save $400. This will change your life like it has everyone who's graduated from this. Just go to becomecma.com and use event, and you'll save $400. Don't procrastinate because your best opportunities are in front of you. I don't want to hear people say, oh man, Barry, the market's changed. Things are different now. It's not as good. It's not going to be the same. The housing market's not. No, your best opportunities are in front of you, not behind you. In 1899, this guy was the head of the patent office. His name is Charles Duell. And in 1899, he said, let's close the patent office. We don't need it anymore. Why don't we need patents? He says, well, and I quote, because everything that can be invented has already been invented. Think about that type of thinking. We don't want to think that way. Your best opportunities are in front of you. Look, I know that right now it's a hard time. No question. We've been through this before. Everything that's happened in your life that's good probably happened because something wasn't very good before that. If you're with somebody that you're happy with, that you love right now, who's your partner in life, there's a chance that someone broke your heart before and you felt awful, like it was the end of the world. And the only reason you're with this wonderful person today is because of a terrible situation that you went through. If you didn't go through that terrible situation, you wouldn't have found this love. Your job, if you love your job, there's a chance that in the past, the only reason you got it is because you had a terrible situation and you lost a job before, and then you found this one. Everything in life is like this. There's so much good ahead for you. There's so many opportunities ahead for you. You just have to believe and be optimistic and do the best disciplines you can right now to take advantage every opportunity that you can right now to get through this period, because the rewards will be great on the other side, and it's not that far away. You know, you guys helped me make this a #1 bestseller. It's a great book that I wrote called Money in the Streets, but it's about the opportunity all around you. And folks, that's what I really pray and wish for you all. So thank you for your time today, everybody. Matt, I appreciate it. I think we finished like pretty much right on time, but would you like me to?
Right on time, man. I appreciate your time, Barry. I just, some parting words for anybody watching this. We got a few hundred people that joined today. Like you said, there's opportunity right now. And one of my favorite sayings, Barry, is don't wish it was easier, wish you were better. And that goes for real estate agents, for loan officers, for really anybody in life. Take this kind of stuff. You going through all the MBS Highway stuff, I didn't shout that out, but I literally subscribed to MBS Highway in my first month in the mortgage industry. So many resources, so many tools, loan officers that don't use it, I just ask them, they're doing it wrong, right? The thing that I lean on, the thing that I see with successful loan originators and real estate agents is they're adding immense value. They're trying to get better every day. In this market where things are uncertain, clients and people need us more than ever. They need us to empower them through education. Because if we don't educate them on this stuff, they wouldn't know. The average net worth of a home buyer versus a renter, it's something like 40x. The average person wouldn't know that. If nobody in their home has owned a home, they don't understand the power and the benefits of home ownership. So I truly appreciate your time.
Matt, I just want to add one thing, because you said something, don't wish the market were better, wish you were better. I would add to that, don't wish you were better, be better.
Right.
That's
right.
simple.
Yeah.
I remember when I was a kid, and I share this story in the book. It just seemed to me like, my dream was I wanted to be a professional athlete. And the thing of it is that I was good in high school, but when I got to the collegiate level, it just seemed people got better than I got better, so they passed me by. So it wasn't in the cards for me. But that's the thing about athletics, is that it's not exactly fair, because you have to have the ability to jump or run fast or do certain things. That's the great thing about what we do. You don't have to bench press 500 pounds. You don't have to run blistering speeds. You don't have to dunk a basketball. You need one thing, and that's heart. How bad do you want it? How bad do you want to go after it? How hard are you going to work? How smart are you going to work? And you put those together with an optimistic attitude, and you win.
Sky's the limit. Appreciate you, brother.
Thank you.
Have a great one. Thanks, Barry.
Bye, brother. Bye.
Thanks, everybody, for joining.